What's up, guys? Welcome back for another EVE Online. This is gonna be a guide that's gonna be basically showing you how I do jump raiding or just sinoing and moving bigger ships around. I personally use just the main and then my alt as a sino. I don't really get in a hurry about moving things, back and forth from Jita with like a Rhea, or moving my ships to a different location. That's why I don't really mind having just one alt that kind of just travels along the path because it kind of doubles as scouting. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly the process that you go to in order to kind of move a ship from point A to point B, the prep work, the tools that I use to, make sure that I have a safe journey and all that. And hopefully at the end of this video, you have a better idea and have more confidence. All right, so the strategy is going to change based on the type of ship that you're jumping, right? Like every type of ship with a jump drive has different jump ranges. And then also the skills associated with it will help with fuel efficiency and also jump range as well. For this video, we're going to be specifically looking at the Jump Raider itself, which the Jump Raider and the Rorqual both share the same distance. They have the highest jump range of any ship, and that is compared to Dreads, Carriers, Super Carriers, Titans, and all that, and even Black Ops ships, right? There are different types of sinos. You have regular sinos, you have industrial sinos, you have covert sinos. So I'm going to do my best to kind of illustrate everything because I'm telling you, like, prep work is by far the most important thing you could do, right? So we're just going to go ahead and just make some notes, and hopefully you guys can follow along and everything like that. So kind of clear the screen up here a little bit. So as far as prep work goes, you basically have your starting point already. Like, let's say, for right now, we are going to be moving. We're on the test server right now, just so I can illustrate this a little bit more without worrying too much about anything crazy happening. But the system we're going to be starting off in is MTech-O. And then I don't know where we're going to go yet. We might do like a few jumps, and where then I'll illustrate kind of like moving stuff back into high sec. But as far as prep work goes, you want to start planning your route. And I use Dotlan for that. So you want to make sure that the most important thing you can ever do is scouting, and also make sure that the ship you are jumping can dock in your target system. You don't really want to be jumping into anything that doesn't have. I mean, you can technically jump to a system and then safe log, but then that requires you to come back in game, get back in fleet, and everything has to kind of line up perfectly, and that's just way too much anxiety for me. So I make sure that everything I move to is stationed. So route being your number one priority, you need to know where you're going, and you want to do it in as few jumps as possible. So, and also number two is value, right? You want to make sure what you're moving has value, because you are going to be like load value. Like if I'm moving stuff to Jita, I'm not going to jump Raider stuff back to Jita unless the value is more than my fuel cost. So you have to take in fuel cost, and then the sino ship cost. I rarely lose sino ships, but venture sinos they're around, I want to say 4 million a piece. So I just kind of like pad with my I guess you could call it operational cost, and I always try to stuff as much value into the Rhea as possible if I'm taking it out back to high sec or whatever. Now, if you're moving all of your assets to another system because you're moving or whatever, it's you can't. I mean, you have to. It's just a necessity. You have to just kind of eat the cost because you're moving to a different system or where the case may be. But if you're gonna load up, like what I do is I usually load the Golem or something into a Phoenix and then jump it close to an escalation, right? And if you know that the bounty payout plus the overseer package is going to be more than what the fuel it costs to jump the Golem close to the escalation and back, those are calculations you need to kind of keep in mind. And one of the biggest thing is docking. Docking is so important. So we're going to illustrate this a little bit more. So you have basically 3 different classes of ships. You have subcaps, and then you have, so your subcaps are going to be basically anything that's not a capital, right? And then we have capitals. This is going to be your dreads, your carriers, and your Rorqual, etc. And then next you have supers. And this is going to be things like the basically super carriers and titans. Now, each one of these different types of ships have docking restrictions to them. So we'll start off with supers. Supers are going to be essentially restricted to keep stars and NPC, right? So if you're moving super carriers like Nyxes or Titans, right, you have to be, if you want to dock it, it has to be at a keep star. And then your capital ships, this would be things like your dreads, your carriers, your Rorks, and things, and like force auxiliaries. We'll go ahead and put force aux in here. So your capitals, right? Like the Rorqual can basically dock in, like, so like caps can dock in forts, Chitaras, and Sutoyos, and keep stars, and NPC. And then everything else, which is your subcaps, will essentially dock anywhere. But for the purpose of this video, we're mainly going to be looking in the capital format. So we're looking for systems that have forts, Chitaras, Sutoyos, keep stars, or NPC stations. Now, you always want to make sure you can dock when you actually get to your target system, and I'll show you the strategy I use whenever we come out of the jump in the docking procedure, the undock timing, and things like that. But it's super important. Make sure that you can dock, and that's one of the good purposes of like having just one Sinowalt. I get to kind of like travel along the long form of the route through every gate and kind of see like environmental stuff going on, like, you know, is there a fleet in adjacent systems, or is there, you know, stuff moving around? And then it allows me to actually get that Sinowalt in system and check and make sure that docking is, you know, allowed, because it's not even just a ship restriction thing. It's also a it's also just like an alliance and rep thing. Because like if your standings with your alliance or your corporation change at any time, you know, you restrict docking and stuff like that. So, you know, on that front, if your Sinowalt, who is most likely in the same corporation as the character that's jumping the ship, can dock in your targeted station or your target system, that gives you more of a real-time kind of situational update and things like that. So prep. It's very important. Now, before we get into actual jumping, what we're going to do is I'm going to explain everything that goes into how I configure my Sinowalt, and then I'll also go into more detail on the Jump Raider pilot side. And I'll give you as much information and knowledge as I can before we actually start the planning and the jumping process. And hopefully that'll give you some ideas on your own setup. Now, this is my Sinowalt. Like I said, you can have individual Sinowalts that just stay at each of the jump points if you're going to make frequent jumps from high sec to null or vice versa. But for me, I don't like, you know, having to worry about too many different Omegas. So I use one account, and it allows me to scout. It allows me to just kind of move her along the route and go from there. I do get her skilled up quite heavily into jump clones, just because I like kind of putting a jump clone in every kind of spot along the route, just in case I forget. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I can jump and make longer gaps a little bit more easier. Like if one jump is separated, you know, by like a region gate or something like that. But just kind of like an organizational thing, like putting jump clones kind of in each station, right? Now, if you are going to be developing a lot of like Sinowalts, I do recommend giving your Sinowalts a head start on the 1 million skill points. You can use the referral link in the description of this video if you're making new Sinowalts, because you want to be able to get the CPU management 5 done, and you have to have that skill done before you even start getting into Sino Theory. For this alt, on mine, she does more than just Sino. So I have her trained in Blockade Runner, and I have her trained in Force Recon, and also Venture Sino. And this is what my normal configuration. She usually just travels in a Blockade Runner, a crane, and I'll show you this fit real quick. This runs with expanded cargo hold 2s, and then she has a covert ops and an interdiction nullifier and some EM amps just to kind of fill the gap there. What this allows me to do is it allows me to travel faster, have interdiction, nullification, and covert ops, and basically I just put like the Falcon or the Venture or whatever in the hold, and then I just travel that way. And so when I get to the target system, I basically have to dock in order to put the Falcon together or the Venture together in order to Sino, and that kind of like forces me to make sure that I'm checking docking rights and things like that. So that's just kind of like a thing I do. And you don't necessarily have to go as far as getting Blockade Runners. You could gate like your Venture or your Falcon, but you know, when people see a Falcon or they see a Venture on D-scan, they're almost you give them no doubt that you're a Sino. When you're traveling around in a crane, it's a little bit more vague about what you're doing. You could be just moving stuff from one place to another, but it gives you a little bit more coverage as to what your intentions are. So over on the Jump Raider pilot side, we're going to be using a RIA for this. The fit is pretty basic, right? Like I usually just buy the ore reinforced bulkheads, the ore expanded cargo holds, and the prototype jump drive economizers. And based on whatever I'm doing is what I'm going to be throwing in the lows here. If you're going from like JITA to null, where you're not necessarily going to be gating through a lot of high sec gates, or you don't have to land in like a low sec and coming through to high sec, and you'll be always going to be carrying probably more to null than you would be back. So if you're taking stuff out to null, I usually just load up with, if I have to have the space, I load up and you just use the expanded cargo holds. It allows me to put more in the hold. If I can, whatever I'm moving can fit into the base, you know, the 172K or whatever the case may be, then I'll throw on prototypes. Prototypes are going to, you know, reduce the per jump fuel cost. And then if I'm coming out of null and taking stuff to JITA, I load the reinforced bulkheads, and I only carry what the requirement is. So if you put these on, it's going to reduce your overall, like, you know, capacity, so 143,000. And because you want to have this little extra tank when you're going through like that high sec connection through low sec, because your last jump going to high sec is always going to be a low sec, and then you're going to have to like jump that one gate into high sec and then jump all the way to JITA. So having this extra tank is recommended. So we'll just leave those on. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you have, I always carry like additional fuel and additional Sino ships. Most of the time when I'm going from like JITA to nullsec or back, I'm using Ventures. They're a little bit longer on the Sino side, but they're cheaper. And so in the case, like, you know, I always carry extra Ventures and stuff with me when I'm coming out of JITA, and that allows me to kind of like replace Ventures at each point, you know, and keep that route kind of stocked. And also you want to just make sure that you're fueled up and everything is ready to go. So now we're going to move on to like the planning phase, which is by far the most important thing that you could do. I have some rules that I follow mentally, right? And these 3 rules are, we'll just call it, is it possible? Rule number 2 is it safe? And rule number 3 is, can I dock? If the answer to any 3 of these questions is no, then don't jump. So what we're first going to do is we're not going to jump too far, but the idea is that you always want to make the fewest amount of jumps from point A to point B. The reason you want to do that is, like, if you know your endpoint, you want to make sure you optimize your route with the fewest jumps, because every jump you do is going to cost you fuel. So to bring your costs down, you want to make sure that you're traveling the shortest distance. So we're going to go ahead and get into route planning. Like I said, we're not going to go like a full route. I'm just going to like basically do one jump and then kind of jump back and kind of show you how the process works. So first off, we're going to go, is it possible? If you hit F10 when you're in your jump capable ship, you can bring up your map. If you zoom out, this white area, that's your jump radius. That is currently what this ship is in distance in, a 360-degree angle. When you're going from one point to another, you want to try every jump to, get near the max, so you get basically more distance and whatever. The other tool I'm going to tell you how to use is Dotlan. Dotlan is going to allow you to, set your route up. So we're in MTECO right now. So that's our starting point. You just, type in the system name, hit add. Down here, you want to make sure that you have the right ship selected for what you're doing. So we have RIA. You want to make sure all these are at the appropriate level for what your skills are. If you don't have, this prefer station system button will let you know if there's a NPC station in that system. Not necessarily a Citadel or a player run system. And so we've got our starting point here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our endpoint. So C2X TAC M5. We'll go C2X TAC M5. Hit add, and we're hit go already. And so this tells me right now that yes, this is a single jump. So yes, it is possible. Obviously, it gets a little bit more weird whenever you get really near range and stuff like that. This will down here will show you the light years you'll travel and the isotopes that you'll use and everything like that. So we know this is good. We answer the first question, is it possible to jump? And the answer is yes. And then now the next question is it safe? Now, is it safe? Now that's a question that the Sino-Alt gets to answer. So what I'll do is I'll go to the Sino-Alt and I'll do C2X TAC M5. I'll set destination. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to undock. And we're going to go start traveling. And the things you're going to be looking for along the way is activity. Is there any fleets moving around? And then once we get the system, we're going to be looking. The next thing we're going to be looking for is going to be stations, right? We want to be able to make sure we can dock with where we're going. Another thing to do is use D-Scan as you're going through, just to see if there's any big camping gates. You can bring the D-Scan settings down to 30 or 60 degrees, and then just align to your next gate. That'll give you a good idea when you get, as long as you're within 14 AU, you'll give you a good idea of who's sitting on that gate if you bring that narrow window down. Obviously, if the gates are really far apart and you can't see the other gate from D-Scan, then it makes you feel any better. You can jump to a celestial or an asteroid belt and just kind of get close. And then do a gate check there. So here we're just going to be jumping. Got 2 more jumps. Since we're on the test server, we're not overly concerned about D-Scan right now, but definitely on the live side, you're going to be looking at that pretty religiously. And also, I don't think I mentioned it before, but in order for the jump raider to jump to the Sino, they have to be in the same fleet. You have to be in fleet together, or else it will not work. So these 2 characters are in fleet, and everything's ready to go. Everybody's fueled. The first jump is planned, and most of the time I plan the entire route. And then as we kind of go through, especially if you're setting up a new route, as you go through that kind of route, you have to make adjustments, and you can. But as you can see, the crane is super fast, and also the Falcon is fast too. But it's really not about that. It's when people see a Falcon, like I said before, if people see a Falcon, then chances are you're gonna get followers. People are gonna follow you around to where you're going, and they're gonna camp you out and just kind of blow your party. If you're moving around a crane, it's a little less suspicious about what your intentions are, and that's just part of making yourself a hard target. All right, here we are. We are in system. So as you can see here, this system does not have a station at all. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back, and most of the time you can what I'll do is I'll go this celestial beacon, because there's no station here. I'm just going to go warp 100 to it, and then I'm going to go cloak, And then I'm going to switch back to my other alt. And now we're just going to go, let's see. We're just going to start kind of moving around a little bit in the vicinity. Go back to the Sino alt here. And you do want to continually check, you know, you want to kind of continually check with your jump raider pilot and make sure that like the system you're looking at is still within its range.
Warp drive active.
And so essentially what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be looking for a place to dock that is still in range and is safe. A lot of NPC areas of Null will have, you know, NPC stations, so those are, you know, really good. If you're part of an alliance or whatever and your alliance has territory, that also makes it extremely easy. And then utilizing jump bridges and stuff will help your Sino alt move through things a lot quicker as well. So we're gonna just kind of keep moving along here. And we'll just keep moving. And we have quite a ways to go before we have to really worry about anything. Also, what you'll see here is I have the map set to Sino fields. And so these are basically just deployable Sinos that are run by corporations or alliances. They're like that orange color. And then the blue, you'll see bluish bubbles as well. That would be like player activated Sinos. And so keep in mind that when you pop your Sino, you know, if people are watching the star map, they will be able to see that there's an active Sino in the system. The only exception to that is a covert Sino. So we have this forward here. We don't have docking rights to it. If you roll over the icon, it'll show docking rights. But I think we're going to continue looking for an NPC station. And also what you can do too, which will help you, is you can actually go to Structure Browser. And you can go to Constellation. And you can just kind of like see what's out there. I'm going to go Region. And sometimes it'll show you NPC or stuff like that. There's another thing you can do. Thing is, we're technically in an area you can jump from the map too, which is kind of helpful if you're kind of like following a path. Essentially, I want to be able to find. We could technically jump now, but I want to kind of illustrate the station docking and everything like that comes along with it. And also, I'm not really gonna worry about like rechecking my once we find a system. As long as we're not that far from our original system, I'm not gonna check it again on .land. But if you're already like kind of on the edge of the jump raider range, you want to double check with .land and make sure that it is still possible. We're gonna keep moving. This whole area is essentially fraternity, so we're basically just gonna, for the purpose of this video, we're just looking for an NPC station to go for. But that's what it's going to be, is 90% of the time when you're jumping stuff, you're going to be on your Sino alt, right? The jump raider is, if you've checked all the boxes and you've answered all the questions and you've prepared and done all that, the jump raider is in very little danger, right? A lot of the risk comes with, you know, kind of moving the Sino alt around, which in my opinion, doing it in a blockade runner is so much better. So one thing I did do is I kind of changed our, just so we can find station systems and stuff like that. If you put in like your start point, your end point, the .land will actually fill in any required jumps and with the requirements you have set. So what I have set here is preferred station systems, and we're going to be going from MTAC O to PF-TAC Q, and that puts us at a midpoint jump at HTAC PA29. And so right now the Sino alt is actually traveling over there. What that'll let you do is, like, if you're starting to build a new route and you don't really necessarily know a whole lot of the area, it allows you to kind of start experimenting. And another thing I'll show you on .land here is if you go down here, there's this little like arc right here where you can search for alternative systems. If you click that, it'll kind of show you different systems that you can click on. If this system's unsafe or there's too much activity, you can start like searching in the vicinity. So for instance, if we want to go over here, we can change it. It'll automatically update, and you can confirm that it's still the single jump and all that. But for the sake of what we're doing, we're going to just keep it from MTAC O over to PF-TAC Q. And with that full route set in right now from point A to point B, you'll be able to see it'll run a total. You'll be able to see the entire per jump and also the entire trip in isotope costs, which will actually help you plan for fuel costs and all that as you're going. So we have a few more jumps. We have 4 more jumps before we get the system, and then I'll illustrate the jump itself. After we do this jump, then I'll illustrate a low sec jump and with a high sec connection, and that would be useful for your return trip if you're taking stuff to JITA. But essentially, what I'm going to illustrate here when we get to H-Tech PA, you can basically take that same strategy and just use it for every jump along your route. Just remember to answer these 3 questions every time. Is it possible? Distance. Is it safe? Is there activity? And can you dock? Being the most important one by far. As far as the jump freighter pilot, while we're actually jumping around with the Sino alt and kind of doing the scouting thing, she's just hanging out in the station. And I'll illustrate some things, some little key points that'll kind of help you as far as kind of better timing the session changes and allow you to jump at the exact moment that you can. And it all comes down to just preference or computer speed or whatever situation you might be dealing with locally. So, well, I guess I can go and talk about that a little bit. So if you actually keep your eye up here in the top left, whenever you session change, where they're undocking, changing ships, changing clones, you're going to see a little icon that's going to pop up. It's like a circular icon, and you might have to remove this thing here. You can see it. So right there, when that disappears, that means your session change is good. You're good to go. Just like if we dock again, you'll see that thing pop up as well. So once we get back into docking, I'm trying to keep the Sino alt moving while we're doing this. When you come into docking, you'll see it again. And now it's good. Another thing I'll note too, when you're undocking with the freighter, you're going to have an invulnerability timer that's going to be I think it's 30 seconds, as long as you don't take any sort of action on that character. So right here, you see this is location change timer. You get, I think it's 25 seconds. So you're invulnerable as long as you don't make any sort of actions. We're going to be utilizing this as well. So we'll go and dock the RIA again. So with the invulnerability timer and the session change, we're basically waiting. When we undock that jump freighter, we're going to be waiting for that session change to be done. And then once it's done, that's when we're going to do our jump. And then the way I do my jumps is the second we actually get to our target system, with where I place my Sino, then we're going to basically come out of the jump and immediately dock. You will get a tether restriction whenever you come out of the jump, but it's not going to matter because we're going to just essentially make sure the coast is clear and then just immediately jump once we get the system, which will that'll become a lot more clear when we get to that point. All right, so we're in system now. Here's the NPC station. We're going to go ahead and head over here. It doesn't matter. There's 2 in this system, but for the purpose of demonstration, we're just going to pick whatever. Sometimes it might matter if the NPC station is out of D-scan range from either gate. That's good because if anybody comes into system, they can't immediately see your Sino. They'll be able to see the Sino, but they won't necessarily, see a jump freighter on grid if you just came through. All right, so we're at the station. This could be a Citadel, this could be whatever, but what we're going to first do is we're going to dock and make sure that we can dock, because you can also light, Sinos with the crane as well, but there's a difference in Sino length. I don't really I take my time whenever I'm jumping, but if it's around locally, if it's an area that I know a lot of, I prefer the Falcon, because the Falcon is only a 5-minute Sino as opposed to the Venture, which is a 10-minute Sino. So what I do is when I first dock, I'll open my inventory, right? And I'll drag all the things out, and then I'll open up my fit window. And I have fit saved, so that all I have to do is click here and go to fit ship. And I don't rig it, because then otherwise you just lose the rigs every time that you did this. And so now it is good to go. Now we're going to switch to the Falcon. So we had it saved. We have the Liquid O already in here. You see the session change timer here. We're basically going to wait for that to go. You're going to be checking local. You're going to be doing all those things. I'm going to go back over to the jump freighter. Make sure its system local is good to go. Good to go. It's safe. It's possible. We can dock, so we're good. My next step is to undock this Falcon. And then the second we come out in space, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down control space, which is going to stop my ship. So I have ship stopping. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the Sino field. And then I'm going to immediately red it. If you're on a venture, you don't have to worry about this because you're going to use absolutely all. You're only going to have 200 in here. So it would be all gone anyway. But if you're on a Falcon, you want to make sure that you red it so it doesn't double cycle. This is going to give you 5 minutes basically. So now we're going to go back. We're going to undock. And while this undock is going on, we're going to keep checking local, make sure nothing crazy is happening, make sure we're good to go. I also go ahead and hit the station and hit approach. So when this Sino drops, we can go right back in. Now, invulnerability timer, sessions, good. I'm going to right click on the capacitor, go to jump to. In the very top of the list, you'll see my alt and the system. I'm going to hit jump. You're going to see 2 icons up here. You're going to have a jump fatigue timer and then a reactivation timer. You won't be able to jump again until this reactivation timer is down, and jump fatigue and all that stuff scales. The faster you go and the more you go. Once you come out of jump, we're going to immediately dock. You can see there's a tether restriction here. That's fine. Where we put the Sino, we came into docking range anyway. And so we're good to go. At this point, we're just waiting basically for this Sino to expire, because while this Sino's up, this ship can't do anything. It can't move. It can't dock. It is basically, just vulnerable at this point. So some things I do while I'm kind of waiting for that is I'll go in here. And like if you're seeding a route, you can separate. You can drop off venture Sinos or whatever the case may be. But really, I'm gonna just kind of refuel. I'm gonna drag whatever fuel I used back in just to fill the RIA back up, and that's the jump. You basically just repeat that every time. And so from this point, once this Sino is done, we go back to .land. We know our next stop is going to be PF TAC Q. And so what you can do on this Sino alt as well is you can go to the map here, and you can go ahead and put in PF TAC Q and go and set desto. But that just lets you know kind of like where you're going next. Once the Sino's down, though, what we want to do is we want to dock back up. We want to repackage the Falcon, pack everything back into the crane, and then hit the road, right, for the next stop. Make sure that you grab the ship and the items, since they're in different tabs. You have the ship hanger and the item hanger. There's been times where I've grabbed everything but the ship because I forgot to go to ship hanger and grab everything. But if you had the route seeded already, and you can essentially travel in like a shuttle. I initially seeded my entire route with ventures, and so now if I wanted to jump my RIA back to Jita, I don't necessarily have to bring ventures with me. I would just be able to put her in a shuttle, which is very fast. It's interdiction nullified, and go straight to the first point. Or I could even jump clone to that first point, and then take a shuttle from there all the way along the route. Right? There's a million different ways you could do it based on how you like to do it, but the covert Sino on this ship is basically here for moving things like Black Ops ships and things like that. Those are nice because they don't show up on the overview or on the map, and they're only 30 seconds. So that's a really, really quick way. You can actually move entire mining ships with covert, with jump portals and stuff like that. So if I'm when I take the Rorqual and a bunch of mining alts somewhere, I can use a jump portal generator on the Rork, put all the mining alts in prospects or cranes or something, and then just move an entire mining fleet doing it that way. I have a video on that you can look up on the channel as well. This is by far the most time-consuming part of the entire thing, is just waiting for the Sino to expire. You want to kind of keep, if you roll over, you can see what time is remaining. We have literally 1 minute left. And then the jumper pilot just kind of chills and just kind of waits. But instead of going over to PF TAC and doing that jump, because it's literally going to be the same thing we just did, I'm going to illustrate the jump into low sec and then gating into high sec. Now, whenever you're coming out of null and you're going back to Jita, it's more complicated than actually going out to null, because you have a lot more things that you need to be worried about. Our Sino alt has just gotten to the low sec system with the high sec connection, and we're getting ready to go ahead and get this jump raider back and through high sec. So what I'm doing is, I know that I want, you should, as far as docking stations go, never dock anywhere that you don't that are not owned by trusted sources. So player-owned citadels and stuff like that, make sure they're like part of your alliance, right? They're blue and things like that. In LowSec, I do not recommend ever jumping to anything other than an NPC station. There are citadels in those that will say that you have docking rights, but the game there is they'll have docking rights turned on for public, and then when a Sino, if somebody's watching and they're camping and they see a Sino pop, they'll immediately turn off docking. So when your jump raider gets through, then it will basically not be able to dock and be stuck. So I, as best practice, don't do any free ports or anything like that. Just do NPC as much as you can. Now, the gate that we're at right now is when we came through, and this is going to be essentially the gate we're going to leave from on our way to Jita. So what I want to do is I want to actually get an NPC station that is within 14 AU of this gate, but not too close. So I'm going to go to this NPC station that's 12.6, because this will allow my Sino to essentially be able to see what's happening on this gate, or my jump raider to see what's happening on this gate when we get ready to jump through it. So we're going to go ahead and approach here and dock. Some other preparations we can make to make things just a little bit easier. We know that after this jump, we are basically going to Jita. We're going to set Jita as the destination. We're going to pick shorter, because that's how it's going to be configured when we get to the other side. And so here we are. This is the NPC station that we're going to be using. We're going to go ahead and dock. You're going to be constantly checking DScan. You're going to be constantly checking local for suspects. You're going to be looking for anything that might indicate any sort of issue you might have. This one, jumping into LowSec before you do the high-sec gate, is by far the most dangerous thing you'll ever do when you're jump raiding anything. It's the thing you want to pay attention the most. So just like before, we're going to unload the Venture, or not the Venture, but the Falcon. Go to the fit. We're going to actually, when we do this, you have to do this occasionally. I'm going to remove the ozone from that fit just so it'll fit properly, because you'll be using ozone as you go. And then we're going to go ahead and switch. I'm not even going to worry about changing the name, but once we switch into Falcon, we'll load up the Liquid O, and then we'll check local again, make sure everything's good, check local and where we're coming from. And so we're going to go ahead and undock, make sure everything's good, everybody's fueled, we're in fleet. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're checking local, we're checking DScan, we're checking in our vicinity, control space to stop our ship. And then we're going to go and pop that Sino, and then we're going to immediately red it, and then we're going to undock. We're just going to keep kind of switching from back and forth to like just check our timing. Make sure we're all good. Spam a DScan here, make sure nothing crazy is happening. And once we come out of here, once that session timer is gone and it's good, go jump to, find the alt, do the thing, come back over here and check again. Now keep in mind, you will lose Sino ships, right? So make sure you're always moving enough value to make it worth it, right? We're in. We immediately dock. We have the tether restriction, but it doesn't matter. We've initiated docking. Even if you bump off the structure, then it's fine. Like, you know, even when you're bumping, you can still dock. Sometimes you gotta hit it a couple times based on like just lag, or we had to hit it twice there. So you just want to make sure that everything's good to go. And there you go. Now we are in LowSec. As you can see, we already have our route set. So what you can do here, there's two things you can do here. You can wait until this Sino is gone. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll let the Sino die. And then I'll just kind of like take maybe like a 20-30 minute break and just, you know, for anybody who watched the jump raider come into system and they, you know, expect somebody just to immediately undock and gate into high sec, they might be trying to set up on the gate or whatever the case may be. So I always, you know, kind of move unpredictably, I guess you could say. So for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and undock and gate. But what you can do too is this Sino can actually stay here, and you can also even have like another alt that's helping you scout. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep this Sino in this Falcon and in this station, so that while we're traveling to Jita, if we ever have a problem, we can undock her here and jump her back and, try again or whatever. So we're gonna basically keep her in low sec as a security measure in case we have to jump backwards in case something crazy happens. So just go through the process of actually getting into high sec. Once you get into high sec, it's a lot less likely that you're going to get into trouble. It's really this low sec connection that's going to be the issue. And so once you undock, we're going to align before we do anything. Because if you just hit jump, then you're in order to like redock, if something happens, you're going to have to like, stop your ship and then dock again, and you have to do all these things to like, make it work. If we're aligning, as long as we're still aligning, we can insta-dock if we have to. So we're essentially just kind of waiting for this, to come all the way around and get up to 3/4 speed. And what we'll do here too is I'll bring up directional scan, and I'll kind of illustrate what I mean here. And so we're going to go 14 AU because we know the gate is 12.6, and then I'm going to bring this down to like 60 degrees. And we're going to show cone by hitting that icon there. And so as you can see here, our cone is actually pointed, our G-scan cone is actually pointed, eventually it's going to be pointed at the gate. You can bring this down to even like a lower radius as well. And we're just basically using that to check what's happening on that gate. Once you're aligned 3/4, we're going to hit jump. And off we go. As you can see here, we can continually see what is happening on the gate. Once you're in warp, it's not going to matter, right? You want to make sure you check all that stuff beforehand. And then once you actually get to gate, you'll jump through and then essentially just do the normal gating all the way to JITA. And then we'll be kind of continually... in most cases, what I do, this Sino process is already done. And with just how these jump raiders are, people are going to see you coming from a mile away. So you just want to make sure everything is kind of cleared. That's why most of the time I'll use her. Actually, she'll like warp to that gate beforehand with just like cloak up. And to make sure there's nothing crazy happening on the gate. So when we get to this point, we can just jump straight through. This is the most stressful part of the entire jump raidering process. Is actually, getting this point right here. And sometimes I just, hit jump just in case, like, there's a lag issue because it's happened. And just like that, we are back in high sec. And essentially everything from this point on is just gating all the way to JITA, which is 5 jumps from where we are right now. And so her sound is about to go down in 6 seconds. Same process as usual. I usually use ventures here, but because it's almost certain that you're going to lose a falcon. Falcons are more for like, areas that you kind of know a little bit better. And then right here, this is like basically just the slow bit, right? Where you have to just gate all the way to JITA. Just like before, we're going to switch back over to the crane. And you can actually tell, if you didn't really worry about the backup Sino staying in low sec, you could actually have this alt follow ahead of the jump raider in high sec just to see if there's anything crazy going on. But in high sec, you don't have to worry about interdiction bubbles. That's one big thing you have to worry about in low sec, is if somebody tries to drop a bubble on the gate. But a good thing to know is if you're already in warp and somebody drops a bubble on the gate, you'll go right through it because all the calculations are done pre-warp. So if there is an interdiction bubble or whatever on the gate and before you warp, it'll calculate that stoppage at that end. If you're already in warp and they drop a bubble either between that gate or on the gate, you'll go straight through it like it's not even there. So keep that in mind too. So we'll go repackage this Falcon just like we normally do. It's just like a habits that you like, this muscle memory that you just kind of get in when it's with this Sino. It's very good. Everything's packed up and ready to go. So I know this has been a super long video. There's a lot of things going on with, the jumping and planning process. And, make sure that if you're using .land that you're, putting in all the right information based on what ship and what skill levels you are, and you're planning the shortest, most efficient route, and you're just checking all those things. Is it possible? Is it safe? Can you dock? And you check all those boxes and you'll be good to go. I rarely lose Sino ships if I do their ventures, but they're cheap, right? Practicing safe jumping is, as long as you practice safe jumping, is very profitable. It's very lucrative and it allows you to import, export, and do a lot of fun gameplay. So thank you for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.